Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, delighted to be peering back into the creative space of Bob McLeod. Bob, thank you for jumping in and being willing to come back a second time.
Glad to be here. It's always fun to talk to you.
Glad to have you, and thanks so much. Thank you for the kind words. The last time we talked, we did sort of a 3,000-foot view of your creative history, your path to creating, and talked about a few titles. But I know that there are some other grounds to explore and some other areas to dig into. And I also know that you're a person who continues to read, write, and create. So, by means of a first question, curious about the stories you're exploring right now, either artistically or as someone who's enjoying work that's out there.
I don't follow the work that's out there as much as I would like to, just because too many other things take up my time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I probably should make more of an effort to search out comic related material that I would enjoy, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm spending a lot of my time looking through everything, original art and books and portfolios and comics and everything that I own, and trying to decide what to do with them,
Hmm. Hmm.
to kind
Yeah,
of weed them out a little bit and digitize them in some cases. And I've just got so much stuff that I'm dealing with here in my studio. And at the same time, I am still creating artwork. Just did a Flash Gordon comic cover
hmm. Hmm.
for Mad Cave, and starting work on a graphic novel that's going to take some time. I've basically written it out, and now I'm trying to shape it into a more cohesive narrative
Nice, nice.
that has kind of an arc to it.
Yeah,
And just about to start a new painting for a friend of mine of a scene in Gloucester. It'll be an oil painting.
love it, love it.
So I'm keeping busy.
Certainly sounds so. Certainly sounds so. I imagine digging into a graphic novel is sort of a marathon of creating.
Yeah, a lot of drawing. Um, the drawing will be more of the fun part. The writing, because I'm an artist, I'm not a writer. So the writing is challenging, and a lot of decisions that have to be made as far as what I want to say, what I don't want to say, how I want to say it, where I want to say it within the narrative, all these decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, well, looking forward to hearing more about that, hearing the direction that you decide to explore, because I also know graphic novels can take on basically any story shape that you want them to, from autobiographical to superhero to crime and mystery. So the field is open.
Yeah, so this will be fairly autobiographical. I'm thinking of doing like a memoir of my career, basically. Not just
Love
my
it.
career, but my whole youth and getting into comics and all of that stuff. And uh, like you say, there's so many different ways you can do a graphic novel. So do I want to do it in a different graphic style? Do I want to do it as comic panels or more spot illustrations?
Hmm.
Again, a lot of decisions.
Yeah, yeah. And on the publishing side, you have crowdfunding. You mentioned Mad Cave, and virtually every major publisher out there now has a comics or at least graphic novel division. So the field is pretty ripe, I think.
Yeah, and I'm not even gonna worry about getting it published until I actually get it publishable.
Hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. And I know you have other projects. You mentioned painting, which was something we actually ended the last episode with. You were talking about painting that you were exploring. So, love that you're continuing to explore creativity.
Yeah, I'm not a trained painter. I've never had any painting classes or anything. I've done a few paintings, some of which I was very happy with, others not so happy with, which is, usual. Um, it's really fun to paint and at the same time really frustrating a lot of the time trying to get what's in your head onto the canvas
Hmm. Hmm.
the way that you intended.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had a system down, like Joe Rubenstein's a friend of mine. He does a lot of painting.
Hmm.
He knows how he's going to paint something. And with me, I'm every time I do a painting, I'm just kind of exploring.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned working on a Flash Gordon cover. You also recently worked on some covers for Dick Tracy with Mad Cave. And that's a nice full circle because at one time I know you also worked on the Phantom. So lots of pulp storytelling there. Were pulps a big part of your reading history as well?
I wouldn't say a big part, but certainly a part. Used to read all the Edgar Rice Burroughs,
Uh.
not just Tarzan, but John Carter and Carson of Venus, all that stuff. I've read the Conan novels. I've read some other pulp magazines, pulp paperbacks rather, a couple magazines, and I love them. But again, haven't taken the time to seek them out as much as I uh, probably would like to. There's some detective novels that I discovered years ago. I'm not even sure how I came across them. Have you ever heard of Shel Scott?
Mm-mm. No, I haven't. I'm going to write that down.
Write that down. Shel Scott, Scott. Kind of a little bit of humor in the detective paperback genre.
Nice, nice.
So he's a private detective, if I remember correctly. It's been years since I read them, but they're a lot of fun. And I read quite a few of those.
Yeah. Yeah. I've recently been reading Craig McDonald is
Yeah,
his name. Yeah, and really appreciating his stuff with Hector Lassiter, and he has a new Slavin trilogy. At least it's a trilogy as of right now.
yeah. So I tend to like thrillers when I'm reading. Like right now, I just read Stephen King's new book. You Like It Darker.
Same, same. Yeah,
Yeah, really enjoying that. I just finished, really enjoyed it. Um, Especially a couple of them in there were a lot of fun. He's kind of my favorite writer, probably.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
that I'm big into horror, but he writes a lot of different genres, actually.
Hmm. Hmm. One of my favorites in that collection was On Slide In Road, the Flannery O'Connor inspired story.
Yeah,
I had to share that with my high school students. It was a really well done piece, I thought.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, going from sort of talking about pulps, were you influenced by pulps or were there other influences that you picked up along the way?
Um, you know, I was hugely influenced by Mad Magazine early in my career.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mort Drucker, specifically, Jack Davis. And then when I decided to learn how to do more dramatic comics, superhero comics, and other stuff, I really started studying Neil Adams and John Buscema
Yeah.
because I figured they were the top two artists in the business at that time back in the 70s. And I studied so many different people from Hal Foster to Milt Caniff to Russ Heath to Will Eisner. I mean, just everybody. Um, the European artist, the French. a Belgian artist, Giraud and Herman and others. So many influences. It's kind of hard to nail down what influenced me and what I was just interested in. I guess others can go through my work and pick out what they think influenced me maybe better than I can. I don't know. I was because I just looked at so much stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading widely and enjoying art widely, it sounds like.
Yeah, I never had too much time to read comics. I really enjoyed Marv Wolfman's run on Tomb of Dracula.
Hmm.
Um, when Roy Thomas was writing Conan, a few different Howard the Duck, Steve Gerber, and a few other comics here and there. Um, but mainly, I would just read what I was working on,
Yeah.
and was always much more focused on the art than the writing, really. So I didn't read all that many comics,
Hmm.
but I like reading comics. They're a lot of fun. Um, and I like reading more humorous stuff better than the darker stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Donald Duck comics, they're a lot of fun to read.
Hmm.
The new movie with Wolverine and Deadpool, kind of not to my taste.
Hmm.
Um, the darker, more violent stuff, it's got its place, and I've done a lot of that in my career, but that's not really my interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, you've worked on such a range of stories. So from the lighter, humorous material to a good bit. You mentioned Conan, wonderful work on Conan as well, and just a laundry list really of titles and characters that you've got the chance to explore.
Yeah, I really like with the novels I read, the TV shows I watch, the movies I enjoy, anything that I consider well written, well acted, regardless of genre, I pretty much enjoy.
Yeah.
So I like romantic comedies, I like mysteries, I like dramas, um, some pretty dark. Breaking Bad was one of my favorite series.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Better Call Saul, um, but then humor too. I just like a lot of different things. Um, I just whatever I consider well written, because I think a lot of stuff is just fluff and kind of pandering and not particularly interested in the script as much as the action.
Hmm. Hmm.
My beef with a lot of the superhero movies is just too many explosions and battles
Yeah.
when we've got decades of really good stories in comics. Um, and I understand why they do it that way. It's just, not my preference.
Hmm.
Like my favorite superhero movie is really The Incredibles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think animation is actually a better way to do superhero movies than live action. Not that I didn't enjoy a lot of the live action movies, but The Incredibles and Into the Multiverse, I just thought were so much fun
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
well thought out. I mean, so much good thinking going into those movies as far as the how they would do everything, how they would present everything, how they would show everything, how they would write everything, the dialogue, just great stuff.
Yeah, the multiverse, the Spider-Verse movies, those are just layered and all the things that are thrown in, you can tell with animation, people are taking their time and going through and really meticulously thinking through every element.
Yeah, we just rewatched The Incredibles recently. There's so many just brilliant things about that movie, in my opinion. Brad Bird, just some genius stuff in there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, speaking of kind of epic storytelling and digging into stories, one of the books that you worked on got a brief nod the last time we talked, but we were talking about our love of Craven and our appreciation of the Craven character. So, curious what it was like to work on that book, Craven's Last Hunt.
I always enjoyed inking over Mike Zeck's work. Um, Part of that, the beginning 3 issues or so were very tightly penciled, and the
Hmm.
last 3 issues were breakdowns. And I always preferred inking breakdowns because I could contribute more of my style into the artwork.
Hmm.
Hopefully, as you read that series, I kept up the way Mike had been doing things in the first 3 issues, so you wouldn't notice a change. But if you really look at it, there's much more of me toward the end than in the beginning. In the beginning, I'm trying to stay pretty faithful to what Mike was doing, even though every time I ink Mike, I make certain changes in certain things. But it was just a lot of fun. I didn't think anything was a lot of people wonder if inkers are, challenged by the pencils,
Hmm.
if they're intimidated by the pencils or anything. And I never felt intimidated. A lot of it uh, was difficult, but anything you do well is going to be difficult. Um, but it was a fun difficulty. I enjoyed the whole series. I, of course, didn't know ahead of time the whole storyline, so I was as shocked as anybody at the ending. Um, so it was just really fun.
Yeah, and lots of there are artistic moments in that book of really getting inside the mind of a character, and really interesting kind of psychological panels, and just one of my favorite Spider-Man stories from all the years.
Yeah, and I liked it so much. I really should seek out more of Mark Damatis's work because I'm sure he wrote a lot of other good stuff too that I'm
Mhm.
not familiar with. But I've only read, one or two other comics by him, I think.
He now has the multiverse, so
Yeah, I
it's
haven't read
there.
it.
Yeah. It's 5 books that he kickstarts and shares, and so uh, working a variety of storylines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in terms of our talk, anything that we've missed before we talk about conventions, web spaces, anything that you want to make sure to include?
Um, I mean, a lot of people, and understandably so, when they think of me, they think of my inking first rather than my penciling.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's understandable because I did so much inking and I inked a lot of high profile stuff. Um, but I would like it if fans would also be aware that I've done a lot of penciling. And usually when I quit a series, it was because I wanted to pencil and ink my own stuff instead of just inking somebody else. Because as much fun as it is to ink other pencilers, it's just not as satisfying as inking your own stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so I also penciled several different series that I'm very proud of. I am very proud of my work on Superman and on the New Mutants. I think I did some good stuff on Star Wars. I remember when I was penciling Star Wars, I was thinking, well, gosh, I'm following Walt Simonson,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I of course really like Walt's work, but I pencil very differently than Walt. Um, so I couldn't really, when I was penciling it, I would just think, well, Walt would do it nothing like this, so I can't really compare our work. And as much as I liked Tom Palmer's inking on a lot of what he did on my pencils on that, um, he inks, even though he was my major influence in my inking, he inks differently than I ink. And I just always wanted to pencil and ink my own work. So my favorite issues of the New Mutants and Superman that I did were the ones that I did the penciling and the inking on.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I'd actually marked down to mention Superman and Action Comics and did not tag it in yet, but one of my favorites of yours as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my old stuff on Crazy Magazine, Teen Hulk, that was so much fun because I was penciling and inking, putting tones on, and just having fun with, you didn't have to try to compete with Hal Foster on it, or Al Williamson or whatever. It's just fun stuff.
Yeah. And I've done just the tiniest bit of sort of playing with comics art. I'm by no means a master of any part of it. I just sort of play with it. But I love that moment when I put something down in pencil and then I bring something over it in ink. So I imagine for a person of your experience and your talent, I can understand why that would be a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, and I think of them as two different skills. Inking and penciling have totally different requirements. And I ink other artists often differently than I would ink my own pencils because they make me think of things in a different way. So their penciling influences my inking. Uh, so when I do my own pencils and inks, it, it's satisfying because it's exactly the way I want it to look.
Hmm, hmm.
But when I ink somebody else, I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't have done this layout this way, or I wouldn't have lighted this panel this way, or whatever. Um, so even though I might be very happy with what I'm doing on them, I'm never as satisfied because I'm fulfilling someone else's vision rather than my own, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And returning to the idea of doing a graphic novel, uh, you'll be writing, have written, uh, penciling, inking, going through virtually any part of the process that you want to.
Yeah, so that's going to be very satisfying and challenging. But yeah, that's the way. If I could start my career over, there are artists that just went ahead and did their own thing, like Bill Sienkiewicz comes to mind.
Mhm,
Um, uh, what's his Mike Mignola.
mhm,
Um, it was difficult in the 70s to go your own way. And I was still learning. I kind of had a lot of catching up to do. So I didn't really hit my stride until about 1980. Um, and then I just got caught up in certain things that didn't, I wouldn't say prevented me from going my own way, but just kind of lured me into the universe of the way they were doing them things
mhm,
instead of trying to do my own creations or my own self-publishing or whatever. Um, my career took off and I was raising a family and kind of divided between being a husband and father and being an artist and with, I'm a different kind of artist than someone like Bill Sienkiewicz. Bill made it a point that he wanted to not be like he started out looking very much like Neil Adams. And he,
mhm,
and he realized, well, I'm an artist just like Neil Adams. I should have my own style instead of doing work in his style. And he worked very hard to become Bill Sienkiewicz. Whereas I wasn't as concerned with my style as much as I was just trying to do the best work I could do.
Yeah.
So my style, I don't feel was consistent. I think whoever I was inking or whatever I was drawing kind of influenced the style I would try to use on it. Because style wasn't, I wasn't trying to be a strong individual style. Mike Mignola, one of the others I mentioned, started out kind of as a big Frazetta influence,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then found his own direction that he wanted to go in and became very stylized. I was just never interested in that. I just was more interested in just kind of doing good mainstream work.
Yeah. Yeah. But and you've done quite a lot of it as well.
Yes, I have.
Quite a range, quite a range.
Yeah,
And the creating hasn't stopped, it sounds like.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm very fortunate to have worked in the business during the decades that I did. I think it was probably the best time, certainly one of the best periods in comics history to have been working. There's a lot that is going on in the business now that I don't really like the direction they're going in. And before my time, there was a lot of uh, problems with the comic publishing industry that made times difficult for a lot of the people in the business.
Hmm.
So I feel very fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were to point listeners in the direction of an issue, a character, something that you've worked on as sort of the Bob McLeod starting point, Bob McLeod, this is where I was having the most fun. What would be one of those places? I'm sure there's not just one.
I mean, I would start him with Crazy Magazine because that's where I
Yeah.
started. Of course, I got better. So the work I did on Teen Hulk is better than some of my movie satire work that I did earlier. Or but whatever. I mean, that's where I thought my career was going to go. In
Hmm.
the early days, I thought I was going to be a humor cartoonist. Um, as far as my more mainstream work, certainly the New Mutants. If you're going to just be a newcomer to Bob McLeod, I would start with the first issue of the New Mutants.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and then if you like my work, just seek out whatever, Google me and find out what else I've done.
Yeah, yeah. Now you're also a regular attender, I know, at least the past few years at Heroes Con. Any online spaces, convention spaces that you want to mention before we close?
Well, I like comic cons that are more focused on comics than TV celebrities and
Hmm. Hmm.
merchandise. So Heroes is a good show for that. Baltimore Con is one of my favorites. Terrificon, I'm going to be out next month. I'm hoping will be a good one. There's some others around the country that are more comic focused. So to me, those are the best shows for comic book fans.
Hmm.
Uh, I understand, of course, the movies have brought the idea of superheroes and stuff, fantasy more into the mainstream public. So a lot of these shows are just pop culture uh, conventions rather than comic conventions.
Yeah, yeah.
Got to the point where I kind of resent them using the word comic in their titles because they're not about comics. A lot of them, comics are just a small part of the convention. Um, and why not just call them pop culture cons or whatever. Um, but those are of much less interest to me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm much more for the comic center spaces as well. And then any online spaces that you'd like to mention.
Someone hacked into my Instagram account and got me. blocked out of Instagram for
Oh
something
no.
that they posted that I'm not even aware of. I just know I went to use Instagram and was blocked out of it and was too busy to worry about getting back into it. So
Ah,
I'm never on Instagram, gave up Twitter because of politics. And
same.
yeah, so I basically just use Facebook and I have a Patreon page that I wish people would check out. Uh,
Yes, we will link it.
it's patreon.com Bob McLeod, um, where I post a lot of my work, um, from current stuff to past work to whatever. Penciling, inking. I've done a couple videos, whatever. Um, so I do Patreon and I do Facebook, and that's about it.
Those are good spaces. Good spaces. I'll make sure and link the Patreon. Anything else that we've missed before we close out?
Um,
Just want to make sure we hit everything, and hope to have you
yeah.
back a third time to talk about the graphic novel as it's coming
Okay.
to be.
Give me
That
a
would
while
be
to work on
fantastic.
that.
Yes,
Yeah, give me
sir.
another
Yes,
year
sir.
to get going on that. I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I greatly appreciate the time and appreciate you being willing to come back on and truly an open invitation. Always glad to talk about your work and always excited for a new graphic novel to read as well.
Well, good. I would just tell fans I'm always accessible. They can message me on Facebook or send me an email. My email is mcleod.bob@gmail.com. If they have any questions or if they want to buy something of my work, I have a website, bobmcleod.com. They can always order stuff through there. It's actually cheaper just to come directly to me. Um, so up to them how they want to go about doing that. They can email me or go to my website.
All right. All right. Well, sounds great. And it sounds like you're cleaning out some things as well. So there could
Gosh,
be
I've
some
been going
pieces.
through, I had a small collection of artwork by other artists that I've accumulated over the years. Some I traded my own artwork for their artwork or bought some things here and there. And so I was just going through my drawers looking at what all I have by other artists, and it's a lot more than I realized.
Mhm.
But now I got to
Mhm.
decide what to do with that. Am I going to auction it off? Am I going to give it to my kids? What am I going to do with it?
Yeah. Well, both of those are great ideas. Glad to have you on anytime.